Welcome to another episode of Chad Sports Talk. You don't know my name's Chad. Take a time with sports. Welcome to Week 4 recap video of college football. We'll go over this past weekend's actions of college games. Let you know how well I did, how well I didn't do. Still ladder. And go over my revamped Eliminator. I've kind of streamlined it a bit. Actually, instead of going by alphabetic, I actually broke it down by conference this time. And I'll look at the teams that are still in it. I did also brought some teams out that were previously eliminated back in there. But I'll get into that a little bit later. Yeah, no, I'm a hypocrite. But anyways, before we're diving on that mess, if you could go ahead and smash that thumbs up for me, especially the content provider. You really appreciate YouTube guys really help put this channel out. You can also subscribe, let you guys review my work. I love you all for doing that. Now, me, you subscribe. This costs you a dime, helps me provide more entertainment value for you. All right, last week for my 10 that I picked, I am going 6-4 in those games, which wasn't bad. I reached that in week 2, not what I did in week 1. But it seems where I'm at. I'm doing fairly well. But this week, my additional 8, I was horrible in. I think I called too many upsets and biting me. Go figure. So let's just go ahead, and also towards the end of this, I will cover a couple extra games I didn't call, but those results were quite interesting, to say the least. All right, first off, we're going for the first game on the list was the battle of the SEC up there in Rocky Top in Knoxville, Tennessee, where the Florida Gators came into town. If you watch any of the college game day, I saw some of the signs out there. They actually, reference how many touchdowns. They have the same much touchdowns as Richardson. And as you notice, he hasn't thrown any touchdowns prior to this game. He was more of a running threat. Richardson was a huge factor in this game. He's the reason why Florida was in it. I did say Tennessee would win, but Florida's going to make it closer than what it was. I think at the time of when I recorded the video, Tennessee was favored by 10.5. I told you Florida will make it close, and they did. There was only a 5-point difference, so a touchdown difference basically to either winning or losing. And Richardson did everything he possibly could. He actually threw for 2 touchdowns, over 450 yards passing, including running for 2 additional touchdowns. So he was a huge factor in this game. Also, Hooker had almost 350 yards passing with 2 touchdowns in the air. And he also ran over 100 yards with another touchdown. So both Hooker and Richardson are both a dual threat quarterbacks. But I think it was just too much Tennessee in that third quarter, where they ended up putting up 14 more points to get that, 31-21 victory edge at the time frame, and they were able to hold on and stave off a late Florida comeback. As they were going for 2-point conversions, couldn't get them. They partially went for extra points, but a little bit better. And that way they went lost by 3. But I get the gist for going that route, and Tennessee was able to hold on and beat Florida 38-33 at home to get them to the top 10 of the rankings. And I think it's the first time they beat Florida in quite some time in Knoxville. Next off, we're head down to Winston-Salem, where Clemson and Wake Forest went at it. And this is another one that was, look at my notes over here, Clemson was favored by 7. I said it's going to be closer than that. It was a little bit closer. Because I really like Hartman. He showed a lot of poise in there. He threw for 6 touchdowns. 6. It was the defense that kind of let Wake down a little bit. They let Ugalele. I probably said it wrong, but I think I'm a little bit close with that one. He actually had 5 touchdowns in the air. So, and Shipley, like I said in my previous video, Shipley was going to be the factor in this one for 100 yards rushing and a touchdown. And I watched him force his way into that touchdown. And it was just good things coming back. I think Clemson and having to have to come in with a late fourth quarter touchdown and 2-point conversion to tie it. Sends the game to overtime. They split, the first overtime possession, both get a touchdown. Clemson get in with a touchdown on their own. Couldn't make the 2-point conversion per the rules. Wake couldn't capitalize. Clemson escapes Wake Forest 51-45, and a slugfest between these two. Clemson escapes Wake 51-45. And then the Southwest Classic between Arkansas and A&M. A&M was favored by 2. I went with Arkansas because I went against Arkansas last year and it bite me in the butt. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go with them this year. And this one came down to the wire. Max Johnson struggled early, and as well as the rest of A&M, as they fell behind quickly 14-0. But they kept battling back. The defense clamped down on Arkansas. And them getting up to a 23-14 lead. Arkansas got a touchdown towards the end in the fourth quarter, kind of get a 2-point game. A&M was driving, trying to hit a game-winning field goal, missed it. It's okay, now it's in Arkansas's court. They start driving, bleed out the clock, set up a game-winning field goal, and one of the weirdest things that you can think of, he kicked it. He set the ball in the left hash, and then as he kicked it, it started going towards the right. And then it hit the right upright at the very, very top. Went straight up in the air and fell in the end zone. That's it. Game over. A&M escapes from the jaws of defeat and end up winning 23-21. Giving Jimbo Fisher 2 wins in a row. But heartbreaking loss for Arkansas with this one. They should have won this one. And we'll kind of see how the rest of the season plays out for the Hogs. And then the most spectacular game out there is between 2 undefeated squads. They're not even ranked, that you don't normally see as undefeated. This is a March Madness showdown. Undefeated Duke went into undefeated Kansas. Now, I think the last video I said Manhattan. My apologies. It's Lawrence. And this was a game that went pretty much down the wire. Kansas pretty much dominated most of this game. They were up 21-13 at the half. Got up 28-13, heading to the fourth. That's when Duke decided to start to come back. Leonard showing pretty good poise, almost 325 yards passing. He had that little over 50 yards rushing on top of that. Daniels showing he's a dual threat, over 300 yards passing, 4 TDs. Ran for another one for 83 yards. And it was just Kansas was their defense actually stepped up and denied any comeback victory from Duke, as Kansas held on to win 35-27 and failed to get ranked in the AP Top 25. And then we head up to the Big House, where undefeated Maryland came in and take on Michigan. Now, Michigan played no one heading into this game, so this is going to be their first true test of the season. Michigan was favored by 17, and I told you all Maryland was going to make this a game, and they did. Tagovailoa is a threat for them. He's one of these quarterbacks that actually could throw it and actually run. So then something that Michigan has yet to face, a true team that had at least a decent defense, a quality offense. And when you prepare your season with Colorado State, UConn, and Hawaii, you're going to find yourselves again tested early. And this happened. They were going blow for blow pretty much in the first quarter. Michigan's heading in halftime, 17-13 lead. Defense is clamped down on the offense in the third quarter. Fourth, of course, that's when they want to start, doing their thing. But Michigan was able to come out on top, 34-27. Then we have to Corvallis, where the Beavers, undefeated Beavers, are taking on USC. That's another one that got tested last week with Fresno State, but able to just, put too much points on them. But it's just because of the different levels of talent, basically, between the two universities. But now they get their first test in the conference, even though this is like their second conference game. But this is going to be a bigger test because Oregon State is now a pushover. And I said Oregon State was going to give USC everything they could, but come up short. And I still pick USC. USC is favored by 6. I thought possibly that's probably about as far as they're going to go. I thought it was like a late second touchdown with Ed got the USC the victory. But it was really the defense that really kind of set the tone for most of the game. Oregon State had a first half lead of 7-3. It wasn't until the fourth quarter, I think, when the defense kind of ran out of gas a bit. some cracks were starting to show here and there, because Dye was able to get 133 yards and a touchdown. Caleb Williams was able to get 180 yards and a touchdown in the air, which was a whole lot. But it was just enough to edge out Oregon State 17-14 to remain undefeated. Oregon went to undefeated Washington State. This one, the Ducks were favored by like 6.5. And with this one, I was pulling for Washington State to pull off an upset. And it looked kind of that way. I mean, for 3 quarters, Washington State was dominating the Ducks. There's no question about that. 27-15 heading to the fourth. I mean, Oregon kept themselves in there. When it was that fourth quarter, that just things erupted. Nix had over 400 yards, 3 touchdowns. Franklin, his favorite target, 137 yards. Ward had 375 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then Oregon made this miraculous drive in the fourth to take the lead by 3. Washington State had their opportunity to try to come back. Ward threw an interception, which iced the game for Oregon, and Oregon escaped Pullman 44-41 victors to still continue their possible march in the Pac-12. Now to the horseshoe, where readjust myself here. Ohio State is hosting Wisconsin in a blackout. That's right, they're all black uniform and helmet. And I thought Wisconsin was going to give Ohio State some trouble. Because Ohio State was favored by 19, and the thing was going to be by 19. I thought it was going to at least by 14. I thought at least 14 points, I believe. I still picked the Buckeyes to win. They're just, I think overall they're probably one of the better university squads out there right now. I think Georgia's up there. Alabama, they showed poise in some of their games that they possibly could have lost, but didn't. And Ohio State's right there with them. And they did not disappoint if you're a Buckeyes fan, because they were rolling. When they were up 31-7.5, that just kind of let you know, okay, that game's pretty much over. And they didn't let up too much in the second half. Ended up going up 45-7, heading to the fourth. That was it. It was garbage points in the fourth quarter that Ohio State gave up. They were just dominated and obliterated Wisconsin 52-21. Then we head out to Ames, Iowa, where Iowa State was playing host to Baylor. Iowa State was actually favored by 2.5, and I was like, nope, I'm gonna go with Iowa State. The way they handle Iowa, the way Baylor got kind of manhandled by BYU. That's kind of how I based that decision off of. But I think it's one of these I could have saw go either way as well, but I went with Iowa State. And Baylor was just way too much for them. They just did enough. Chapin had over 200 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. And Decker had over 280 yards passing, 2 touchdowns themselves. So the passing attack was a very efficient, is the best way to put it about it. And I think it was a very efficient game all around. And as Baylor had just one more score than Iowa State, and that was it. 31-24, Baylor escapes Ames with the victory, ending Iowa State's undefeated season. And then we'll go head off into East Lansing for my 10th pick. And with this one, Minnesota was favored by 3. And I thought Michigan State would rebound from their loss at Washington, because they had some moments where they were looking good. They were doing some things right, despite where they weren't looking good for a majority of the game. And Minnesota hasn't really been tested yet. Michigan State just collapsed. That was just, they couldn't do nothing right. They were shut out for 3 quarters as Minnesota was up 24-0. It was a one-sided affair all around, and beating the Spartans 34-7, and ending my 10 with a 6-4 record. So not too bad. So let's go over some of the other games that I went over. My games that I thought would be kind of interesting. And we'll start off with the clash between App State and James Madison. Now, I thought App State was going to win this one. They were actually favored by 7, but I knew James Madison was not going to be an easy one. I think App State's going to go find themselves playing a lot of these games for some reason. But when James Madison ran off 22 unanswered points in this game, in the second half, as App State had a commanding control heading into that, but the fact they were able to do that kind of shows the poise and the commitment James Madison has, even though they won't be eligible for anything this year because they're transitioning into the FBS. But they're going to make some teams kind of pay for them showing up. Centeo, I'm probably saying his name, or Centeo, James Madison's quarterback. Sorry, Todd, but English is not good today. I'm going to score a 2-yard run late in third quarter and threw for a 36-yard pass to Terrence Green Jr. to help propel James Madison to a 28-25 early in the fourth. So they were coming back at that time frame, and then Kalen Black's 4-yard touchdown run kept off a scoring drive with a little over 10.5 remaining. And with App State's final drive stalled at its 42 when Chase Bryce threw an incomplete pass on 4th and 9. They had 49 seconds left. That was it. Centeo was 16-20 for passing for 204 yards and another 88 yards rushing. Black finished with 85 yards on the ground, and the duo connected on a 23-yard touchdown pass just before halftime. Bryce threw for 235 yards and 2 second-quarter touchdowns. Cameron Peoples and Nate Knoll each added a pair of short-yard scoring runs in the second. That's when the Mountaineers went into halftime leading 28-10. But the fact that they could not close out the Dukes is evident that the Sun Belt, I think, is probably on par for being one of the best Group of 5 conferences this year, and should get some recognition. Then we had the Chapel Hill, where you had Notre Dame visiting North Carolina. Now, for me, as an Irish fan, I had questions about this team, about this offense. They lack the identity. That didn't arrive till the second half of the Cal game when it finally showed up. The defense has always been kind of there. The offensive line is supposed to be, the forefront and the running attack. And Notre Dame's offense struggled once again to start the game. Slow start. North Carolina was able to jump up early with a touchdown in the first quarter, but it was that second quarter that really things kind of exploded for the Irish when he put up 24 points in that second quarter to head in the halftime leading 24-14. And then throw in 2 more touchdowns in the third, just pretty much put him in control. So that means North Carolina makes some, bad calls or trying to go for it. May had 300 yards and 5 touchdowns, so he was able to shred that Notre Dame secondary. Pine was only able to get 289 on 3 touchdowns. Estime was the focal point. He ran a lot, busted out some big yards, had 130 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. But there was definitely some penalties called that were kind of questionable, and then which caused for more headache as Mac Brown went chewing on the ref and got a penalty himself. You go and chew on the ref for so long before they throw the flag, and there's definitely some questionable calls that are going out there. There's a lot of things that Notre Dame has to clear up, but Notre Dame's able to hold on to win 45-32 to go 2-2 on the season in North Carolina's undefeated season. Then we head up to Lubbock, where the Longhorns, at the time the video of that quarter, was favored by 7. And early on, it looked like Texas was going to roll away. I mean, they were up 24-14 at the half, but Tech would not go away. They were very tenacious. They kept coming back. Smith had over 330 yards passing with 2 touchdowns. Thompson had 70 yards on the ground with another touchdown himself. Card was decent at quarterback, throwing 2 touchdowns, but only 277 yards. Robinson was a focal point, over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. The game had to go into overtime. And in overtime, Texas had the ball first. They were just gave the ball to Robinson, and he coughed it up. Very rare that he coughs up the football, but he coughed it up. A&M or the Tech pounced on it. But when Tech had possession after that Robinson fumble, after they made that other first down to get closer in there, and they're like, first and goal, they continue to run plays. Not sure why. I think once they got in that position where, okay, this is safe enough distance, should be, a 100% guarantee the kicker will make it, just go ahead and go for it. But they kept running plays, and then they finally kicked it, ended up beating Texas, and I called it. Then we headed out to Jersey, where undefeated Rutgers was playing host to Iowa. Now, Iowa, there was something about Iowa I wasn't quite on yet, because offensively they were struggling. Defense-wise, the Hawkeyes are great. They're phenomenal. They need to do exactly what they need to do. The bend, don't break type of philosophy, and which culminates with Simon having 300 yards passing, but only 1 touchdown. So it's the bend, don't break. Okay, you can get all these stats, but you'll miss that key one, scoring. And it was just the offense was meh. I mean, they still put up points, but it was nothing to write home about. It was really the defense that controlled the aspect of this game. I went with Rutgers on this one, even though I was favored by 7.5, then went by 17. I just like Rutgers' offense better, but it was Iowa's defense that stood strong and beat Rutgers 27-10. Then we have to Provo, Utah, where Wyoming came to town, and Wyoming came off of that very successful game they did against Air Force, where they shut down the nation's best rushing attack in Air Force. They had they're coming off this roller coaster on, beating Baylor and then turn around losing to Oregon. So that was a time frame for BYU to kind of rebound from that letdown in Eugene. And for the most part, they were kind of doing what they had to do. Hall had over 300 yards passing and 4 touchdowns. I mean, it was phenomenal. Davis had 131 yards on the ground. Hill was Hall's favorite target for 160 yards, 2 touchdowns. But the Cowboys defense were kind of being, pestering them a bit. And towards the end of the game, they actually start shutting down BYU, and Wyoming start to try to come back. But, it wasn't enough time. There was enough oomph by BYU to get enough points at the right time to keep the lead out of reach, and BYU ended up winning 38-24 to go 3-1 on the season. Then the battle for the Iron Skillet between TCU and SMU. At the time when I did that video there, TCU was favored by 2. I was like, nope, Mordecai is going to shred him. Shred him he did. He had 372 yards in the air, but only 2 touchdowns. And I think it was another one where they were bending, but not completely breaking, but cracks were in the defense. Now, cracks, stress fractures, but it didn't break. But it was just a good old-fashioned slob knocker. 28-14 at the half. I was like, great. TCU is going to blow me away. But SMU kept trying to come back. It was just too much Horned Frogs. Ended up scoring 42 points behind Duggan's 3 touchdowns in the air and Miller's 1 on the ground. And they won the Iron Skillet, knocking off SMU 42-34. They'll go out there to Cal, where a couple unique teams were coming into town, both of them 2-1. And with Arizona, it's like one of these teams that for the past 3 weeks, I've picked them to lose every single time, and I was only correct on 1 occasion. And I was like, okay, let's look at this game a little bit deeper, because DeLoria was actually decent again. I mean, he had over 400 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. And Plummer, less passing, He only had 245, but he had 3 touchdowns. So I think both these schools right now are somewhat similar, but the rushing attack by Cal was the focal point and the reason why, where Ott had 274 yards. That's right, 274 yards on the ground with 3 touchdowns. If he wasn't there, I think Arizona would have won. But he was there. Cal was just too much. They kept scoring multiple times. And, I mean, they almost averaged 2 touchdowns a quarter. The only quarter they didn't do that was the first quarter. They led at halftime 24 to 21, excuse me. Then once they came back, it was nothing but Cal. They had beaten Arizona 49-31. Then we head over to Cincinnati. Cincinnati's looking trying to rebound. I mean, had a great game against Arkansas. Actually tried to come back, but fell short. Bringing in undefeated Indiana. Last year was also one of these games that Cincinnati used to kind of springboard themselves into national attention. And this one was with all the hype with Cincinnati, because I think they were favored by 16.5 when I did the video. So I'm looking down at my notes over here. And I was like, okay, no. I'm going to say Indiana's going to give them a little trouble. Zalek should, be somewhat decent. Not even close. That second quarter, that's all was needed. Once Cincinnati put up 28 points in that second quarter, went at halftime, leading 38-10. That was it. Then those defense kicked in afterwards. Left a few plays come in there, but Cincinnati crushed Indiana, 45-24. Get themselves to 3-1, ending Indiana's undefeated season. But now I'm going to kind of go over 2 other games that were at least interesting and they didn't cover, and one was definitely a surprise. Miami was playing host to Middle Tennessee. I figured, give them some money. There's like $1 million or something like that. They end up paying out. Then come down here and get beat up by Miami. The Blue Raiders have something different. They're a blue wave down there in Florida, and Van Dyke actually got removed from the game because he could not connect to the correct team. It was just bad for Miami. I mean, 24-10 at half, and it was just a shot for shot in the second half. Miami couldn't get the edge. Middle Tennessee just kept matching them, busting out big plays, left, right, and center. Middle Tennessee went into the Hard Rock and upset the Hurricanes. Beat the U 45-31. The one that didn't really call, I probably should have. I should have went after this one that didn't. That was K-State and Oklahoma. Now, I thought Oklahoma was going to probably edge out K-State, so I didn't really cover this one too much. But Martinez and company had other ideas, and Martinez just went off on these guys. I mean, he had 234 yards passing with a touchdown, but what really drove the, derailed the Boomer Sooners was his running attack. 148 yards on the ground, including 4 touchdowns. This man accounted for 5 touchdowns for K-State. 5 of them. All 5. So they only had 5 touchdowns, and Martinez scored them all. Great not to be denied. He had 114 yards on the ground for the Sooners, and Gabriel had 330 yards and 4 touchdowns in the air. But he only had 4, not 5. Just a wild showing, but once again, K-State goes into Norman. Been a while since they've done this, but they went in there, upset the Sooners, 41-34. And there you go. Those are my picks, or my review of the last thing. So 6-4 on my top, my 10, and then 2-6 on my extras. So now it's time to dive into the Eliminator. So, as you can see, I actually broke it down by conference and what's remaining in said conferences. Now, I know for quite a few teams, I actually did already remove them from the list, but here you can probably see a handful of them come back in. But for the American, it's all the members you see there are all 3-1. They're all kind of poised, kind of do their own things to kind of eliminate them. I think Cincinnati, UCF being up there is no surprise to anyone. Tulane did have that win over K-State, so that's a good win for them right now. If you look at the ACC, you have a lot of teams up here that are undefeated or 3-1. Louisville and Virginia 2-2 on the Cups. I did originally took out Virginia Tech. I think it was like after week 1, after losing Old Dominion. I snuck them back in here, and also got Miami, but as you notice, their logo's a little bit smaller. We went to the Big Ten and the MAC. The MAC has absolutely no one. They have no dominant teams in there whatsoever. In terms of the Big Ten, you got a lot of these programs that are 4-0, bunch of 3-1, especially Indiana, Rutgers, Maryland, Iowa, and Illinois. 2-2s include Michigan State and Purdue and Wisconsin. So those guys are possibly on the way out. Even though I think Purdue was never one of those programs I did originally have out, especially after their collapse against Syracuse. Snuck them back in here. Michigan State's past 2 weeks has just been abysmal. They just got outmuscled, outplayed. But I'm keeping it in here for right now. We have with the Big 12 conferences and Independence, as you can see, I brought back Notre Dame. Plug them back in here because they're only 2-2. Things can happen, but I don't think they'll make the playoff. Then you look at Conference USA right now, the two big ones are Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee. UAB still hanging around, so we'll kind of see how that one all plays out for those three. The Big 12, Kansas, 4-0, still not ranked. The 2-2s, Texas and West Virginia. We'll kind of see if those guys can hang around any longer. Then out west, we'll go to the Mountain West here. Something surprising there. I mean, Air Force, UNLV are 3-1. San Jose State's 2-1. Wyoming, at the time frame when I created this slide, they were still playing BYU. So as you'll see, you'll get the Red X and get eliminated from this pack. I mean, you still got the 3 teams sitting on top, with USC, UCLA, Washington, all in the. And then you got to keep Arizona in there. They're 2-2. The last 2 conferences out there, SEC and Sun Belt. Coastal Carolina is undefeated. South Alabama only has that 1 loss, and they barely lost to UCLA. They also have Georgia Southern there at 3-1. You don't see James Madison on here. Like I said, they're transitioning to FBS even though they're undefeated. But, they're not up in here. And the SEC, everyone's still alive. Understand that I'm being a little hypocritical with my Eliminator. I'm bringing back some squads I probably shouldn't have, because I think I was getting rid of teams too quickly, especially this early in the season. We'll kind of see how the season progresses, but I don't see many 2-loss schools in contention for a playoff position. So I think right now it still looks like Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State are your big 3. And I think that 4th slot right now could go either Clemson or USC. It depends on how they finish their season. But anything can happen. As you can tell, these past couple of weeks, anything can happen. I think App State winning in College Station, and then Middle Tennessee winning in Miami. How Missouri State was taken into Arkansas a couple weeks ago. So you have all these games out there that you're just like, it lets you know the reason why we watch these games and just kind of root and get excited for and kind of see the pageantry and the drama play out. If you want to see teams do good, you also want to see teams, rise to the top, rise to the challenge, test themselves mentally and physically on the field. So games between Georgia and Kentucky and Georgia and Tennessee are going to look and have a whole different feel because both Kentucky and Tennessee are doing pretty good. But hey, like I said, that's my Eliminator. That's my recap. Let me know down below what you thought about last week's games. Which one surprised you the most? Which matchup you're looking forward towards next week? Which school not in the top 25 should be in there? Kansas. Just let me know down below what you thought. While you're making a comment, make sure you hit that thumbs up. And you can also share this video with friends and family. It helps promote this channel out. Once you subscribe, make sure you hit that bell to let you know next time I post any more content on my channel. And I will see you next time. on Chat Sports Talk.